and welcome to Exclusive Networks Explained Live. My name is Tom Kirby, Product Specialist here at Exclusive Networks. Just to advise, this webinar is being recorded. So today we're joined by Infoblox, and from Infoblox we have Andy Young, Security Lead for Western Europe. So today we'll be taking a look at the advantages of DNS security as a control, threat intelligence that we can gather from DNS traffic, and look at some of the really interesting and innovative things that Infoblox are doing in this space. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop them in the comments and we will follow up directly with you following this session. So with that, Andy, I appreciate you joining us today and I'm looking forward to this, and over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. Thanks ever so much for your time in advance. So yeah, we're going to be running a session here on how you can stop attacks before they begin. And what I mean by that is, how you can prevent threats sooner, how you can detect threats other solutions don't, and how you can respond faster to those threats. So in terms of the agenda, there's three kind of main topics that Tom kind of touched on there that I'm going to cover, which is DNS as a security control. So that's basically the advantages that a unique approach to security can bring. The Infoblox threat intel. This is how the application of unique threat intelligence that we create can bring proactivity to your security posture. And then SOC Insights is, how the application of DNS expertise can reduce SOC events from hundreds of thousands a day to single-digit curated insights. So, before we get into it, let's just quickly discuss what problem we're trying to solve here. So, DNS has been around 40 years now. At Infoblox, we've been doing DNS for the last 25, so a large portion of that. But ultimately, it was a foundational means of connecting computers. But this was essentially a time 40 years ago when the total number of computers were a couple of dozen, maybe a couple of hundred, and before security was even a thing. The way it was implemented had no bearing at all for security concerns. Security wasn't even a thing. So 40 years on, DNS is still foundational. It's a foundational underlying mechanism, I would say. And due to its kind of ubiquitous presence, it's become a critical service for enterprises. And you lose DNS, you lose everything. You lose connectivity. So in that time as well, security's kind of come a long way. It's kind of been hot on the heels of DNS. There's been many kind of vulnerabilities for DNS over the years and all that kind of stuff. But for a while, security has really lagged behind. But now, cybersecurity dominates our lives. We all know that. We've all seen the stats on how cybercrime issues are growing. So, how come over that period of time things seem to be getting worse? Don't want to be doom and gloom about it, but ultimately, if you think about all the different threat attack, attack vectors, you consider what are the top concerns for you. You might be thinking things like phishing and ransomware and all the common things we hear about. In fact, 14 of the 15 threats that ENISA, European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, their threat landscape that they produce, 14 out of the 15 threats there, DNS is involved. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. It's really not. In fact, I'm very positive about it. It's the opposite, essentially. And in this report that we see here by the NSA, they define how malware and command and control for malware can be mitigated with DNS in more than 90% of the malware. So that's an amazing figure. And so there's, we can kind of see there's a way forward, right? There's a means of being able to do things differently. So what do I mean by DNS as a security control? So instead of seeing DNS as a functional means of connectivity. Let's see DNS as a security controls, a means of enforcing security on your network. So how would that look like? So DNS is involved in every single connection. Any two computers that are connecting, whether it's internal or internal to external, they require DNS. And not only that, it's the first stage in any connection. So, what I would say is if you need to block a connection, if you need to block a threat, where's the most logical place to do that? Certainly, you can't move any further left than DNS, right? So DNS is the quickest, easiest, most powerful layer of security that can be deployed across your whole network. So fast to implement, no heavy lifting, it's pervasive across your entire estate, and it's the first layer across all of your systems. Now, one aspect that I find really interesting in all of this is it actually also by controlling with DNS, you also offload a lot of the downstream workload and login from other security solutions. So if you can block it at DNS instead of it going through your IDS, IPS, all your other security solutions, and those doing all the great work that they do and sending logs to the SIEM, you can offload a lot of that. In fact, we fairly recently had a real great life example from a customer of ours who actually had our solution kind of upgraded to some of the newer security features, and the next day the security team were calling around in a bit of a panic, finding the network team to see why there was a 60% reduction in alerts going through their next gen firewall. So that's not a guaranteed figure for every customer, but it's a really good real example of the real value of having DNS as a security control, essentially. So, they thought the network had gone down. No, we were just doing it that way. So ultimately, if you can do that with DNS, you're kind of offloading all of the other security controls and the login, all that functionality you're putting on DNS. And there's other reasons why you would want to do it with DNS, and we'll drill into those in a moment. So of course, we've just discussed blocking and doing it with DNS and why that is so much more efficient. But ultimately, the mechanism to block, there's a mechanism to block in the vast majority of security controls, right? But what's really important is what we're blocking and why. That's the key to this. So let's talk about our threat intel. So around 6 years ago, we kind of pivoted our focus onto DNS threat intelligence. And what we did was we set up a global team. It was headed up by Dr. Renee Burton, who's a 20-year veteran of the NSA, specializing in DNS security there. So that's key. That kind of expertise is key, right? What you actually need to be able to create threat intelligence from DNS, particularly given the nuances of DNS, is you need to be experts in threat intel. You need to be experts in DNS. So as I kind of touched on earlier, we've been doing this for 25 years. We have a big customer database, so we have access to 70 billion plus anonymized enterprise customer specific DNS queries per day. Enormous amount of data, but customer specific, and that's really key as well. So that's, of course, is unique to us. Because DNS is involved in every connection, it's a very chatty protocol, right? And that's a very positive thing. It can come with challenges in that, if you don't manage it right, you can have a lot of DNS to try and find the data, the valuable data that's in there. But what that requires is data science, machine learning, AI. So we are experts in data science. We've been doing this now for quite a few years, and it's now paying off dividends. And of course, the other element to this is visibility into global DNS. So we've talked about how we have visibility into our enterprise customer DNS. We also have visibility into global DNS to get the kind of overall picture there. So we have a unique approach. We track adversary infrastructure. So this is before an actual attack starts. So I've heard it described as like watching the threat actors and nation state actors who are basically watching and waiting to target you. We're actually watching those folk, monitoring the activity through DNS, and so we know the adversary infrastructure because of that. So essentially, it brings together data science, DNS threat intel at scale, and what we're doing is categorizing domains as they're created, and we're monitoring behavior for those as well, and that will be based on metadata, including registrar, TLS domains, TLD domains, SSL certs, name server, reputation, registration behavior, all these kind of things all add up to all valuable information that allows us to essentially score domains and come up with a decision as to whether they should be blocked or not. So, what makes us unique is that infrastructure threat detection. So, if we do a comparison on infrastructure-based threat detection versus malware-based threat detection, this kind of highlights the value for us. So, a lot of security tools will actually focus in a kind of reactive way. A lot of them will be very malware-centric. And my point here is all of these solutions that you see here are fantastic. We're not saying you should be replacing them. What they do really well. But their method of blocking, controlling is typically done through the analysis of malware. It's kind of a lot of the threat intel they work on is kind of post-breach. It's certainly, if you take an EDR, for example, an EDR starts its work when something has got on your network, across your network, it's maybe written to the disk and it started to detonate. That's when all the good work it does comes into effect, and it's looking for indicators of behavior. Fantastic, great. However, there is a far more efficient, proactive way that you can mitigate these before they even get on your network, and that's where we come in. So we have a proactive approach. We're detecting domains at the stage that threat actors are creating them for their campaign. So before even that malware in that particular case has even been written, they will stand up the infrastructure in preparation to be part of a C2 or data exfil role in a future attack. We're detecting it at that stage. So we've got this patented. So what we're doing is identifying suspicious and malicious domains. We track those threat actors as they create those new resources. And a really interesting stat is that we find 60% of attacks are blocked before even the very first query is seen on a customer network. So that's how proactive we are. We're doing that because we're tracking adversary infrastructure. So infrastructure-based threat detection is threat agnostic. It's also platform agnostic. It's also device agnostic. For us, threat hosted on attacker infrastructure is less relevant than the infrastructure itself. The threat actors can change the hosted content. They'll often create domains, age them, swap them around, rotate them, change content. All of that for us is irrelevant. By blocking the infrastructure of the attackers, we stop their attacks at kind of every internet-dependent action. So incredibly robust approach because it doesn't rely on scanning and detecting the host content in order to kind of offer protection. So for us, they're all just potatoes. Maybe bad potatoes, but we don't care what flavour they are. We can block them all, and do. So a couple of points to focus on here. So we track adversary infrastructure. When we identify them, quite often they try to hide by moving from kind of their dedicated infrastructure to, say, some other cloud-hosted resources, Cloudflare or something along those lines. We still track them, so it doesn't really matter to us. So, and even if they're not associated to known infrastructure, there's still suspicious behaviours that we're able to discover. DDGAs, so DGAs, domains that are generated through algorithms. This is essentially the means of a threat actor generating a huge, great big haystack of domains within which to hide the needle of the domain that they're using. That's been a long used method, still used, but what we're finding now is threat actors will start using dictionary domain generated algorithms. So these are far more difficult to detect, but we detect them. We identify those domains, not just the domains. We can also identify the dictionaries that they're using, and therefore if we know the dictionaries they're using and if it's associated to a threat actor, that gives us a very strategic view of the domains they're using. Lookalikes are used in many attacks, and it's often kind of overlooked. But if you're looking through logs, or even if you're looking at a domain as a defender, it's quite often difficult to kind of spot lookalikes. They'll use Cyrillic characters and all those kind of good things. We do that, but we discover those lookalikes at the moment they're created, not when content has been populated on them a week later. Threat insight, that's things like dynamic threats like data exfiltration. So this is getting data off your network. Zero-day DNS, we've trademarked this. This is to foil the latest quickfire attacks. We started seeing this on our customer networks where threat actors were creating domains and using them immediately. So instead of waiting for the propagation delay that the industry has when a domain is created to populate the WHOIS databases, we actually get to block the very first query to a domain that isn't in the newly observed domain blocking list. So we've got that down to about 1 minute now. So 1 minute after domain is created. So moving on to the final subject, SOC insights. I didn't highlight this earlier, but SOCs have their own unique challenges. Best summed up as a lack of resource, really. We've been working on a feature for a couple of years now, about 3 years, that addresses this in a unique way. And that way is essentially, using our DNS expertise. So again, DNS is a chatty protocol. We can log everything. You've got access to the logs, the security logs, DNS activity. That's great. And you can send it all to your SIEM if you wish, and you can write SIEM rules, and you can maybe detect stuff that's going on. All good. However, as we've seen, DNS has its unique. It's unique, and we've been doing this for many years. We know what's good, what's bad in DNS. So what we've done is pre-processed those logs. We're looking through those logs in real time to see if there's anything that needs bringing to your attention. So if you think of you're a SOC analyst, what type of incident is it? Data exfiltration? Is it ransomware? What's the priority? Is it critical? How long has it been on the network? How many assets or hosts are affected? And who had that DHCP lease 2 weeks ago? All of that is bundled together in an alert. And actually these figures here are from our first customer who purchased this feature during an evaluation process, and we quite often see this level of the quantity of events. So in this particular case, over 500,000 events a day. We were delivering to them 24 SOC insights where all of that intelligence was done and delivered to the SOC so that they got to see all the relevant information rather than kind of spending a lot of time starting off with an IP address and working out where to go from there. What it looks like, this is a static screenshot, of course it is. I'm not showing you a live demo, but but ultimately what we deliver through to our customers is these SOC insights, which tell you, what type of event it is it critical, and there's a button there to investigate where you can drill into more detail and export or consume this through an API into your SOC. So the power of Infoblox threat intel. What we're able to say with confidence is that we are very proactive, right? We are blocking, on average, threats 63 days before an attack. That's proactivity in action right there. So, and it's easy to work those figures out. We can look at historic breaches as time goes on over a rolling time frame, and we can reference where we were blocking as opposed to when industry become aware of IOCs. And on average, it's 63 days. And proactive approach, though, in security, you'll probably know, comes at a cost typically. Normally in false positives, you normally suffer with a really bad false positive rate. Our false positive rate for the whole of last year was 0.0002. So incredibly, well, insanely low false positive rate, I would suggest. And again, blocking 60% of those before we even see the very first DNS query. So as I like to say, block and forget with low regret. And to do that enterprise-wide across all hosts, OT, IoT, remote workers, with a single kind of consistent enforcement policy. So to wrap this up, we offer security assessments. It's a free service. We can give you a unique insight into what threats we can see in your DNS. So essentially, we would tell you, what you would have blocked, and not just that, but the contextual why. So we're able to do that over a 31-day period and deliver that to you. Yeah, hopefully you've been able to see how our approach is unique, how it allows you to prevent threats sooner, detect threats other tools don't, and respond faster. And the key to all of this is Infoblox threat intel. And with that, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to hand back to Tom now and maybe open the floor up.
Thanks, Andy. That was really interesting and thought-provoking stuff there. And again, really appreciate your support and joining us today. As said, we'll follow up with any questions following this directly. But if you do think of any questions again following this, or would like a separate session with us, please reach out to myself or your exclusive network contact, and we can get that set up for you. But this does bring us to the end of Explained Live with Infoblox today. So again, thanks everyone for joining us, and we hope to speak to you very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.